Hello, my name is Stephanie Toman, and this video is part of the series for the Advanced ICDL Database Software qualifications. So we're using Access, and you can use 2016 version, 2019, or Office 365. I'm going to demonstrate in Office 365, very few differences. It's usually generally how it looks. So I've already done the fundamentals video, if you've had a look at that one. And that covers the basics, gives you an idea of an overview of databases. If you're newer to databases than you'd like to be before you start this qualification, it might be worth going onto YouTube and having a look at the basic Access database, which is a series of videos that I've done that would help if you need to get some of your grounding sorted before you start this. So this area is going to be about field properties. As you can see by the list, we're looking at the creating lookup fields, default values, mandatory fields, validation rules and text, and input tasks. So this is all the areas to do with how your fields look when you're in datasheet view. So your input puts information in, and this will decide how that information looks, what's allowed, what isn't allowed. So it's a way of keeping control over that information. The other thing that we've got as part of the materials when you enroll on this course, when you receive them, is we've got videos that obviously you can watch that I'm doing now, but you've also got some slides if you like snapshots of different features that we're covering within the tasks and things that we're covering within the database qualification. This might be a way that you prefer to look at some things, or it might be a different way to look at them at a different time of the day. And it might be that you're filling in gaps or you're familiar with Access databases, so you just want to do an overview in some of the areas. So it's entirely up to you how you use those materials. Obviously, part of the materials as well will be, I've got some software here, database software materials that you can open and use, go along with the demonstration that I'm doing, and also you can have a go at them yourself. And we have obviously practice papers that you can do to make sure that you assimilate the information and understand it and know how to put it into practice. So practice is the answer, not just watching a video. Not always assimilated by a majority of people, really. A lot of the time we do have to put this into practice. Okay, so I'm going to start by looking at the lookup tables. We're looking at lookup fields. This is the first one, and the next one will be looking up tables. So I'm going to open the custom computers database, and this is in your materials. I'm going to go into the design view of the repairs, so you can right click and go straight into design. We're going to add a field, a lookup field, that's going to use a wizard to have certain information, data source information that we can drop in to our database. So I'm going to put in processed by, tab over or click over, and the area we're using this time is the lookup wizard. Now previously, if you've done the database with us in the ICDL format, then you may have used a lot of these areas already, but this area is to do with the wizard. So we're going to click on there. You'll have two options in the wizard. You have an option if you want to get the values from another table or query. They're already there. In other words, you can just bring them over, or you can type them in yourself. So let's use this option first. We're going to type them in for ourselves. So we're going to click on next, and then we've got the option of popping them in there. So let's put some people's names in. So these are going to be people within the organisation that we want to show process these areas. So we're just putting some last names. You can put in anything you like, put your own name in if you wish. It doesn't really matter, just to give us an idea of what we're doing. So we've got some names in there now. If we click on next, we'll keep it processed by as the name of the table field. And we could limit to list here, but I want to show you how to do that differently. So limit to list is obviously a way of saying that you can't add something else other than what's in the list. So let's finish that. And now if we look in here and we can see, go into the lookup tab here, you can see those names just down there, quite small I know, but you can see those names that we've just added. Now this is the row source, so this can be changed, it can be updated if it's not limited to the list, which is here, just down here. So we could say if Brown has left and we've got a new person working with us, we could put in a different name. And we could add another name as well using that colon. See the semicolon in between? Semicolon in between, add another name. So that way, if we go back to our datasheet view and the table automatically asks you to save it, we've got our names here and we can allocate them accordingly. I could go back into here and I could change West to Tally. Go back in here, save the table again, and then when I redo the things, I now have Tally instead of West. So at that point things changed, West left and Tally started. So that's a really straightforward way of doing things. And then what we can do is we can limit that list, so like I talked about earlier. So back into the design view, down to the limit to list. Notice in databases when you don't click, there's nothing going on along here, but as soon as you click in there, you can see that arrow becomes available and we can say yes. So if now I go into my datasheet, resave, and I put in something that I just want to put in, and tab, this is what will happen. It will say that it's not part of that list. So it's limited, so it won't allow you to put it in. It's good because it stops people putting in information that's not, it's redundant information if you like. It could be something like the sort of like amount of room you have in a class. You might have like 50 maximum and somebody comes along and puts 51. If it's not on the list, they can't add it. Okay, so that's good. If you want to come out something like this, you can do an undo, and that will stop the database sort of screaming at you, going in and there, as it can do, and you can get a bit frustrated with it. Escape sometimes works as well, but undo, if you put something in that's inappropriate, will help you to come out of that. Okay, so that's covered the lookup fields. We're going to look at the next one we're going to look at is lookup tables. Okay, so let's look at the lookup a table. So we've got the repairs in design view, and what we're going to look at is the engineer field is going to have a lookup using the wizard. Okay, so we're going to look up a table this time. So we've still got the repairs open, so that's what we need in design view. So let's just go into here. And we're going to look at the engineers table. So if we click in the engineers, double click on that. And what we're going to do is we're going to get a wizard for the engineers' names. Okay. So data type, we're going to put in a stop. Okay, so let's have a look at the lookup a table. So we've got repairs, we go into design view, and we're going to click into the engineer field here, and we're going to go into the, as we did before, the lookup wizard from here. This time, however, we're going to use the first feature. I want the lookup field to get the values from another table or query. So we're going to click on next. We're going to make sure that it comes from the engineers table because that's where we've got the names. We can have a look at that if you want to before, to see what it's looking for. And then we got next. We're going to take over the engineer's name. So we're taking a single item over. If we were taking all items over, we would use this, but we're taking a single one over, and then we're going to click on next. We're not going to sort anything, so we're quite happy with that. We can click on next, and we're quite happy with the way that the column fields look. Okay, so then we're going to click next, and then we've got engineer, and you could change that name if you wish, but it's engineer, that's what we're going to call it, and finish. The table must be saved, which we've done, and then when we go into the view here, and we click on there, you can see now that these have the specified names within that table that we used. Let's just go into here. If you look in the engineers, you can see those are the names that we used within that lookup table. Nice and simple and really straightforward, and it gives you that option again of dropping down rather than typing lots of information in. You can just tab drop enter, tab drop enter as an inputter, and you know that only the information that you want to be used will be used. So that's the lookup tables. The next thing we're going to look at as part of the field property is the default values. So as you can see with the lookup field, useful tool. It's good because it maintains integrity between tables. In other words, if you have information in one table, if you had customer orders, then they may have a customer field, and it makes sure that you cannot put in an order if there is not a customer already in there. Looking at the default values next, let's close this database and let's go back to our data sources. And this time we're going to open up the CIA database. So we've got default values. These are really useful because these will put common fields in or regular fields, data in that the inputter doesn't have to keep putting in. So if you've got a common cost, or you've got a particular town that keeps coming up all the time, you can have this sat in there automatically when the inputter puts in the information in, but it also can be changed, either accepted or changed, so it's quite useful. So we're going to look at the order details in the design view, and you can see that if we go down to the amount field, so if we've got the field, remember, is here, and our field properties to that field are below down here, and you can see that's where the name is there. There's our default value there. If I just go back to the datasheet view, you can see that you've got an amount here. So it looks like you've got a common 1, common 2. So you could decide what it is you wanted. So let's say we put in a common 1. So then we go back into the datasheet view, make sure we save it, and you can see now that that new field has that default value already in there. So if we put in more information and tabbed across, etc., it's already got, let's put a line number in, and it's already got the one, so I can accept it, or I could change it and go across like that, and you can see that now the new default comes in automatically as well. Really straightforward, but definitely worth having a look at it. And let's just see what other things we can do with the default value. There's a couple of other things you can use with default value, but it's definitely worth looking up if you want to continue. But an example would be in your order date. If you go down, you can put things like equal date in the way that you would use a date with open and close brackets. Click away, go back in here, into yes, and that will give you a current today's date in your next default record. You can have things like obvious things like paid. You've got a yes or no there, so you could actually just put a no as an automatic, if you like, and then click on there, your table again, and you've got an automatic no that you could change to a yes. So lots of things that you could do with a default. So the next thing we're going to look at is setting a mandatory field. Okay, so mandatory fields are really worth using if you need information, particular information needs to be required. You'll see things like this on the internet when you're filling in a form, and it won't allow you to complete unless you fill in the mandatory areas. So on databases, it could be important too. So let's have a look. So we're going into customer details, still in the same CIA database, and we're going to go to the design view on this one. We'll look at the telephone field. As we did before, we click at the telephone field and then we look at the field properties that go with it. So you've got the telephone field here, and we're looking for the required. So it's a mandatory field that is required to be completed. So it's on no at the moment, so we can drop that down and say yes. Now when we go into the datasheet view again, it asks us to save the table as it always does. and then we'll get a message that's asking us what option we want out of the three. So the first option, yes, means that it will test the existing data with the new rule. No means it won't test the existing data but will apply from here on. And the cancel means don't apply at all. So we're going to say yes. Then what it asks us to do is existing data violates the new setting. So there's data in there that don't have a telephone number, in other words, but it wants us to, once again, keep the new setting, revert to the old setting, or cancel completely. We're going to keep to the new setting. And there's the one, as you can see there, that violates our required mandatory field now. So what we're going to do is let's put in a phone number for here, 014 you can put any number that you wish to put in and then tab over. So that's that one. If we put in a new record, spell my own name. Let's put in a customer reference of, we've got 32 here, exotic foods, village green again, village, Newcastle, I don't know, I'm just making this up as I go along. Let's do it NE, I know that much, and then a 2GG. Let's not put in a phone number, tab past it, and then tab past that, and then back down to the new, enter. So you can see here that it's now saying that you've missed out the mandatory field. So that's really all it's getting at, is it makes sure that somebody does complete the information they need to complete, which you would put in there, and then it would be quite happy to move on and do what you want. If you tab on then, it's quite happy to move on. So that's just your mandatory field. Next thing we're going to look at is the validation rules and text, which is also quite useful to make sure that anybody's inputting puts in the information that you want in the way that you want. So that's what we're going to look at next. Okay, so validation rules and text. We're going to be using the same database table, customer details, but we're going to click away from the telephone and click in the title area. So you can see that I've put this information in here. So the way that I would do that is just type in Mr. or Mrs. or Miss or Ms. or Doctor. When I click away from it in the validation rule, it automatically puts speech marks, etc. around it, because as it does in Excel and Access, anything that's text or characters, we call it, will have speech marks around it to make it acceptable. Then what I've done is I've just typed this in. So this is what you can type in as the designer to let the inputter know what is going on. So it makes sense by the title, must be one of the following. Nothing new. Okay, so we pop that in. We've got our validation rule and our validation text. Go front to the front end to the data sheet view, click on yes, and you can see that we now got our new option here. So if I tab over, let's say I come along and I think it's sir for whatever reason, and I tab, then you can see why the validation text can help. So it's worth doing. It clarifies things to the user. Okay, so let's OK and let's undo that. So what I need to do now is maybe what I could do is I actually could add in sir if I wanted to. So I could put in sir there and then I could put in Oh, it's got a B there, that's why. There we go, always fix it. You can see it's popped the speech marks around it, it's fine. And I could put in sir here, and maybe put in a comma, grammatically correct. Go back to the front view. Okay, yes, we've changed things. Now, if I try to type in sir, maybe with a capital, and I tab, it accepts it. Okay, so you can change things accordingly if you wish. Let's just do it. It does this, remember what we said, do and undo, takes that data out, and then what you can do is you can actually get on with doing it again. So if you don't want the sir, obviously we don't because it looks a bit ridiculous. We've got to take that out, and then we can take it out of here as well, and take the comma out too. And go back to the beginning, yes, and yes, because we're going to do that. Tab, and then we can put in a Mr. And if I tab, make sure that put it incorrect, then it was quite happy to move on. So it's definitely worth using. They can be useful, like I said, if people do put different information in, because people, you know, like they'll just put in a different title. For example, they might use something that's not even in there, and you can add and change things accordingly to meet your cohort. So definitely worth using. Remember that once you've done it, you're putting in the validation rule yourself. I'll undo because it doesn't like it. I've got hanging there, if you like, data hanging there. You can put that in yourself. Don't need to use expression. And you can do things like if you've got like numbers of rooms, if you've got no more number, that you've got 10 rooms, you can put no greater than 10, and you can just use expressions and a 10. There's so many things you can do in validation rules that keep things tight. And there's lots of examples of that actually in the basic database of how to use that. But this is a little bit more to it and a bit more interesting. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to be looking at the input masks. Okay, coming up next. Right, so as before, input masks control how data is entered and displayed in a field, just like some of the other stuff that we've been looking at in this series. And a combination of different symbols can be entered using this. So a good example really is what we're going to show are telephone numbers, hence I'm sitting in the telephone field. Before that, however, on the slides that we give you, it's got lots of information, as you can see, about what the numbers mean. So you've got an example there of 0, the number needs to be entered. You can't do anything else, but you have to enter it. And 9 is not necessary, it's not required if you don't enter it. And then you've got lots of other things. The hash represents data, and L is for a letter, and then you've got like characters, wildcards. Wildcards are covered really well in the database, earlier database series that we did for the ICGL Foundation. And there's lots of information in there that can make this useful. And the best way to do it really is to know the basics, as we're going to show you, and then try it out yourself to see how it works for what you need it to do. So back to our database, we're going to do the telephone, and we're going to go into the input mask just here. So if we click into the builder here, wizard. Okay, I'm just going to save the table first, and then the wizard will come up for us. So you can see how to select masked words and try it. You've got a try it box as well, where you can see what it is you need to use in order to get your information in. We're going to look at the phone number one. So this is part of the syllabus, so we're going to click on next. And this has automatically done things for us. So the 9s, remember, are not necessary, so you don't need to put information in if you've got 9s, but if you've got 0s, you definitely do. Okay, you've got placeholder characters to display, not really necessary at this stage, so we're going to click on to next. We are going to use the one with the symbols in the mask, so you've got the brackets, if you like, to show where that area code is. So we're going to use that version within our database, and then next. So all the information that is needed is being done, and we can just then go and create it. So you can see how it's come out here. We've got a 4 9s in speech marks there, starting the brackets around it to show area code, and then we've got the 0 0 0 9 3 zeros 9 semicolon 0 underscore. So it's just how it's set out within the database itself, the code. So let's go into the front end, and we can see that if we click in here, that's the nature of it. So if we put in a letters, for example, it's not going to accept it. Remember, it's numerical only. Okay, makes sense? It's a phone number. So if we put 1 2 3, it will accept that. But then there's a number missing. It's still quite happy to accept that because we've got 9s there, haven't we? If we wanted to put an area code in, we could put 021. And then it takes us on to the next one. And then we could put a phone number in. If we didn't and we tapped, it would not be happy because remember that it's got to be specified for this field. So we have to put a number in. So we can put in 1 2 3 4 5 6 just to make life easier. 7, tab over, and it's quite happy. And then if we tab and tab and tab and tab, it'll come up again ready for us to do the next number. Notice that it doesn't do the previous ones, it'll just do whatever comes up, the new ones that come up. If we want to take that off, we just go back to the design view, and then what we do is just delete that out and then go back in. The table will automatically save, and then if we go into here, it's not there anymore, and we could actually put in that as well. It will accept it. So input masks, really useful. As I've said, if you go into the design view, think about it for the syllabus at this stage, but in life, if you want to, let's just undo, it's not happy, that record. See if we can get in now. There we go. Yeah, there's input masks that you can use, lots of different things. So your postcode is another useful one. And so you can have it specified that you have to have certain things. And then you can try them out on here, how you want it to sit out with a space maybe. You can see that it won't work because it doesn't like. Let's go over there. So you need to think about how you're going to do that appropriate mask. Okay? So that's that. Let's cancel or finish. Okay, escape, cancel, and escape. And that way we've come out of it. We no longer have an input mask. It's definitely worth looking at. As I said, part of the syllabus is around the telephone number, postal codes. Have a little play with it. There are other things, obviously, that you can do with it. But as I said, stick to using the input mask in the way that I've shown you with regard to the syllabus and the exam. So that's the last part of this series with regard to the lookup fields. I hope you've enjoyed, and remember you can use the materials that go with it and the slides if you wish in order to simulate it, and then we have practice materials as well. Thank you.